Now it's two-way. So I've seen guys with 20 or 30 or 40 years experience sitting next to a new grad explaining to them why your pipe has to be done this way or how to do slope pipe. But then you'll see a newer person actually showing them how to use some of the new technology that's out there.
Hey everyone, welcome to Big Jib Draw, the podcast that's here to help young professionals navigate the marine industry with clarity and confidence, answering your questions as authentically and openly as possible.
That's right. Transitioning from school to industry can feel overwhelming, but you're not alone. Think of us as your friendly neighborhood guides. We've been there and we're here to help.
Our podcast is proudly sponsored by the SNAMI Canadian Atlantic Section and hosted by me, Danielle.
And me, Pranay.
Let's get into it. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Big Jib Draw, where today we have another guest on the podcast for you guys, Jim Gosse, a graduate of the Naval Architecture program at the Marine Institute, and now with nearly 40 years of experience in the shipbuilding industry. Jim currently works as Talent Solutions Manager with Genoa Design International, with whom he's been working for over 10 years. Today, Jim's here to share his career journey along with some insight into recruitment and retention, both past and present. And fun fact, Jim and I have worked together in the past, and we still continue to go out for coffee every now and again. So it's great to see you, Jim. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
Welcome, Jim.
We discussed this a couple of times, so I'm glad we could finally make it happen. Share some insights. Hope to inspire some people.
There you go, for sure. And I can imagine that the insights you're going to share are definitely going to be valuable, especially for our target audience, the young students and young professionals of the shipbuilding world. So we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So since we are starting at the beginning, Jim, why don't you take us back to your beginning? What did your first job in shipbuilding look like? And what stands out most when you think about those early days?
So when you guys finish up here, I want you to go to Google and Google 80s drafting office and then go to images. And what you'll find is exactly what it was like when I walked into the drafting office. So my first job was in New Brunswick. It was in St. John. It was at St. John Shipbuilding. It was on the Halifax class CPF program. I went in, walked into the drafting office, and just like you see in the pictures, right, a huge open space. Lots of drafting tables, huge drafting tables.
Yeah.
Guys bent over the tables, pencils, erasers, the whole gamut, right? Architect scales and stuff like that. And that was it. We were working away. We were editing drawings. We were doing change work. So they'd find engineering problems and then they'd fix them down in the field and then send us back the information, and we updated the drawings. So, and then you had the chief draftsman sitting in the back watching everybody, right? And, that was my first job.
So what brought you into, I guess, like what's the progression then into your current role?
Well, it's over the whole 40 years, right? It's kind of, there's been an evolution, like technology started to change, and it started to, even back then, like we were on the boards, but a lot of structural drawings for the CPFs were done in MicroStation. So CAD was already starting to catch on. And when I finished up, I moved back here to St. John's. And then all of a sudden, CAD became a necessity, right? So computer-aided drafting, that was it. If you didn't know it,
that's right, yeah.
You needed to learn it in order to get a job. Kind of.
When about was that? Around what year, I guess, would you?
So that would have been early 90s.
Okay.
So I graduated in 88, immediately went to work in New Brunswick, worked 3 years up there, and then I came back. And I did some retraining. I took about 6 months and went back to the Marine Institute just to learn how to do computer-aided drafting.
Okay, wow. Yeah.
And
was that common for classmates to do?
No, it was not. A lot of it was learn on the fly. This was a government-sponsored thing. So, like, of course, I was on employment insurance, and then this came up.
Sure.
So I got extended as I was doing this program. And then as soon as I finished, I went to work on the Hibernian project.
Nice. So over the course of your extensive career, I know you've already mentioned tools and having to retrain and that kind of stuff. what are the biggest changes you've seen in tools? And maybe that is the biggest change, but tools, technology, and especially how ships are designed and built over the course of your career.
The tools have changed, obviously. Pencils replaced by computers. Flat 2D drafting, that's been replaced by 3D modeling. 3D modeling has been replaced by smart 3D modeling. So now it's not just a 3D representation, right? There's all this data attached to it. You can get your centers of gravities. You can get all kinds of stuff in there. And now we're starting to get into digital twins. Besides that, like even the hardware itself, like, the great big huge 20-pound towers are gone.
Right.
Now it's little laptops. You go in and you'll see flat screen monitors. There will be 2 or 3 of them on a desk, whereas like we used to have the great big behemoths, right? And they were heavy, and like all of that stuff has changed. And, so now we're into a position where the latest buzzwords are, AI, obviously. And
that comes up in every discussion we have, I think now. Pranay and I were so used to hearing that.
Yeah, and it's people are getting sick of hearing the term, but really, like, you need to educate yourself. And AI is actually, it's a multiplier, right?
Absolutely.
I remember back when CAD came along. I remember talking to the old guys. Computer's going to take our jobs. One guy is going to be able to go and design a drawing, a boat all by himself. With a computer. And that never happened at all. What happened was it allowed engineers to ramp up the complexity. And so then everything started to become more complex. So now you'll see that boats now are way more complex than what they were, 50 years ago. A couple of other things about ships that have changed. You don't see the nice curvy. Everything now has got to be efficient and, cut down on waste and all that stuff. So you don't see those, like the big champagne stern on the Titanic. You're not going to see that anymore, right? Like everything now is all about efficiency and stuff like that. I still think it's cool, but some people think it's kind of boring.
If you're a ship nerd, right, you're going to think it's cool.
Oh my God.
That's
The other couple of other things too that I'm noticing coming out more and more now, and I'm seeing stuff popping up, is like 3D printing is getting huge, right? 3D printing. I thought I saw something the other day about a full ship or a boat being 3D printed.
Wow, right? I definitely want to hear more about that.
If I may, I have one such models with me, Jim. I went to do this course in the UK, and the company, they used to make people do this like case study on paper up until like 2024. But then since 2025, what they've now done is they've moved that entire case study into like 3D. So they've essentially 3D modeled like the entire ship into small Lego parts. And then they're like, yeah, go ahead, build your ship. And so
incredible. Yeah, the possibilities are endless now. My gosh.
Another technology too, this is really interesting, is like virtual technology, right? And so Kieran Pennell told me this first when I went to work at Genoa. He said, one of these days, there's going to be no paper drawings at all. Down on the shop floor, a guy will put on a set of goggles and he'll just look around and he'll see everything and where it goes. And I heard that Newport News are already doing that. They're using that technology, doing their aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. So
neat.
It's crazy where the technology is going. You need to embrace it. You need to learn about it.
The more you know, the more you know. And I think right now it's just a lot of fear, and even when you mentioned about AI, that's a common thing. It's fear. People don't know how to use the tool to their advantage, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So now that we've sort of embarked on this conversation and we've started talking about the different tools that you've seen and why we are moving about finding different and new ways of delivering work in more and more efficient timelines. Since you have now experienced both sides of that coin, what would you say has remained consistent despite all this time? Something that has remained the same.
Archimedes' principle hasn't changed. Froude number is still the same.
Yeah. You're right.
A couple of things that, I went a long time between visiting shipyards, and I walked in to Vancouver shipyard. I hadn't been in a yard for a long, long time. And, the sights and the energy, the sights and the smells, that was the big thing, right? You walk into a shipyard and you get, the grinders are going and the welders are going, and you can smell the, like it's smoke, but still it's the sound of boats getting built.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
there's tractors going around, and there's buggies going around, hauling around units and stuff like that. The enthusiasm of the new people that you hire, that hasn't changed, right? The kids coming in now are just as excited when they get a brand new job as what I was when I went in.
Absolutely.
Lots of times when I, wake up in the morning and I'm pissed off at something or somebody, which happens. It's known that I'm going to go in and there's going to be, younger people in there working that are going to be doing awesome stuff, and they're enthusiastic and things like that, and give them a little bit of guidance, and kind of with that, something that also hasn't changed is like the informal mentorship, the informal transfer of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But what has changed with that is now it's two-way. So I've seen guys with 20 or 30 or 40 years experience sitting next to a new grad explaining to them why your pipe has to be done this way, or how to do slow pipe, or, but then you'll see a newer person actually showing them how to use some of the new technology that's out there.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
So you're getting it both ways now, right?
Yeah.
But that's some of the things that are still consistent,
Yeah, the on-the-site learning, I guess, like I think back to my time when I first started my career, and all of that initial learning is so valuable. And I do know sometimes it's hard, especially for people that are experienced in the industry, to listen or to take advice from a newbie. So it's nice to hear that, they're also leveraging the young people that are coming in with the technological experience, right? Because it is, at the end of the day, I always sell it like we're all one team. It's one industry. As much as there are competitors and things of that sort, like we're trying to service the industry of tomorrow, like we're building an industry for the future, a sustainable industry.
I get a little side story here. This was really interesting. This sticks with me. We had a guy working in Vancouver, and very highly regarded, and he was from one of the Eastern European countries, Ukraine or Bulgaria or something like that. Well known, and everybody looked up to him, stuff like that. And then I had a lead that I just put in place, and it was one of the people that I hired. And it was only like 1 or 2 years before, yeah, we got to get this guy doing checking. So within 3 or 4 years, he was actually leading a small group of people, and he had this guy on his team. And so I reached out to the guy, said, "Can you give me some feedback?" And he was like, "Yeah." He said, "He's one of the best leads that I ever worked for." So here was a guy who had like at least 30 years of experience.
Yeah.
Telling me that, the guy that's leading me now, who's been out of school for 4 years, one of the best people that's ever led me. That was
age is but a number.
Yeah.
So tying that in now, talking about the talent recruitment, getting into the industry and building that industry of tomorrow. I'm kind of curious as to what's happening in way of talent right now. So where are you seeing the biggest pressure points when it comes to hiring and retaining people in the industry? Because all we hear is talent shortage. What is the biggest issue? What are the biggest pressure points from your perspective?
Yeah, the struggle is real.
It is. I know.
And when you start going to conferences, you're hearing it everywhere in every industry. Then there's something going on. So one thing is just a demographic thing. Like us old guys are aging out. Some fellas are hanging on, but then you get guys they're getting burned out. They're fed up. They're retiring. They're going doing different stuff. Maybe playing guitar down at the ship every Thursday night, going to open mic night or whatever. And then you have some people like me who are trying to give back. But my age group now, my generation, are aging out. And we're not seeing, replacements come in fast enough. And you'll hear that from almost every industry. There's just not enough people coming in to replace the people that are leaving, right? And what that means now is that companies have to start thinking differently about the way that they approach everything, from how they build to how they recruit. And, so recruiters need to start thinking outside the box. Recruiters like me have to be able to bring in young people and get them trained up, get them mentored. They need to be willing to bring in people from outside of the industry or looking to break in. I've had success with that, but there's a lot of places that are very resistant to it. They don't want to put in the time and the effort to do that. They don't mind waiting for company A to bring in new people, get them trained up, and after 5 years, poach them away. But we don't want to invest in the development and stuff like that. And there are some companies, I think our company is good at developing. I put a lot of effort into it. I put a lot of faith into it. I think it's one of the things that we do well. But not every company is doing that. And so they're, if there's not enough people there to fill everything, we need to do things differently. We need to try to do things better. And to go along with that too, like project managers and stuff, they have to start doing their work differently as well. They have to start thinking differently. And when they run their estimates and they say, we need 50 piping designers, well, do you really need 50 piping designers? Can you get away with 30 and just do things a little bit more efficiently? Right? Can you get away with 20 piping designers and 10 naval architects that can jump in and kind of do a little bit of everything?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
So thinking outside the box and being a bit more creative in your resourcing.
Yeah. Don't see enough of that. But I think that's the companies that are going to start to figure that stuff out, embrace technology, and then think of different ways of doing the work that they do. They're the ones that are going to start to creep ahead, right?
So when you're hiring, one question that I constantly get when meeting with students or talking to newbies in the industry is, what do recruiters actually care about? So when you look at a resume or meet candidates, what actually makes someone stand out in a meaningful way? And what, I guess, I hear so many horror stories of people like looking through a pile of resumes and, that one, if you have this thing, it immediately gets tossed in the trash or something. So, like whether or not that's true or not, but at the same time, what are the things that would make you say, oh, we need to keep that at the top of the pile?
Yeah. Specific to brand new graduates and even like students that are trying to get their first work term, especially. I have one working with me now, first year electrical student, right? Awesome. She's awesome. If I'm still in the industry when she graduates and we need an electrical engineer, I would hire her in a heartbeat. I can't speak for like other recruiters, but for me, again, I try to think differently. I try to think outside the box a little bit. Actually, that should be a drinking game. Every time one of us says
outside the box,
take a shot. I don't know if you see that or not, right? But one of my favorite books, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, is all about learning how to think outside the box and stuff like that. So I try to implement that stuff. What I'm looking for, like, there's usually a lack of technical experience with somebody who's brand new. They may have had 1 or 2 work terms if they're a new graduate, or maybe they've had 4 or 5 if they're an engineering grad. They may have had 1 if they were a naval architecture grad from the Marine Institute, but there's going to be a lack of technical experience. There's not a whole lot there that you can draw upon. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for an opening that I can start a conversation. Right? A 2-way conversation, start to dig in and ask some questions, try to find out how they answer and where they're going and stuff like that. And so then if you have those gaps, you haven't had a work term or anything like that, you probably already have enough life experience that if you can structure your resume in the right way, that you can get in there and then provide enough information that's going to give me some openings and some cues to let me figure out like what a person behaves. And the things that I'm looking for is, I'm not looking for a list of the courses you did in school, right? If I know how hard it is. You're doing your resume, you're doing naval architecture. Okay, I'm doing naval architecture and we study all this stuff. I did naval architecture. I know all the courses you did. Don't need to see that on your resume, right?
That's good insight, because that is a common thing I hear is we don't have much experience. So what am I selling, right? What am I putting there?
Anybody that's, teamwork, I'm huge on teamwork, right? Nobody's ever built a boat all by themselves. They might say that they have, but they needed help. So you need to have a team. Problem solvers, like I just said that, like problem solving is like running into an issue and trying to figure out how to fix it. That's huge. That's huge everywhere. Doesn't matter if it's engineering or medical or whatever, right?
What are the best ways for people to showcase that information to you? Like, I guess seeing extracurriculars and things like that too, if people are part of organizations or school organizations or anything like that. I guess I'm just curious, like what would you look for to see that skill?
Any like volunteer, you brought up a couple of really good ones, right? So, any jobs that you had, any volunteering that you've done, coaching,
Nice, yeah.
coaching sports, officiating sports. And I've done all of that. So if somebody has on the resume that they volunteer for the Canada Games, right? I could talk for hours about the Canada Games. So like, okay, like what did you do? That's interesting. So when you were doing that job, when you were volunteering, did you run into any situations where like somebody was freaking out about something and you had to solve it? Like those sorts of things. And when I can find those things on the resume and start the conversation, I typically end up drilling down into stuff. Had one guy still working with us, worked at Burger King. Oh, what'd you do at Burger King? Well, just flip burgers, and eventually, I was a shift supervisor. Okay, shift supervisor. Ever had to fire anybody? Yeah, I had to fire my best friend. We dug into that. We talked about it, and it was like, yeah, that's a life experience that not a lot of people have.
I completely agree.
He was willing to make that decision and fire his buddy because his buddy was being a bit of an idiot. All that stuff. Any cues that I can see where I can go in there. So, I wouldn't, how you put it down too is kind of important. And I'm not a HR person, so I can't coach you on how to put it in your resume. But as long as there's enough stuff in there that I can see things and ask you about it and then start a conversation. Another thing is I don't mind people being nervous. And I've seen some people come in and they have been so nervous. Oh my God, Danielle, like I would have to, like, I stopped multiple interviews in the middle of the interview and said, okay, listen, like put down your pencil and your pen. Like, it's like, are you nervous? And that's like, forget about everything. Just think about me and you down the Duke having a pint. Like, just talk to me like you're talking to one of my buddies. I'll ask them. And then I would reframe the questions in a way that doesn't sound like a job interview, because I don't want them to talk themselves out of a position because they're nervous. I want them to relay the information, and I've done it enough now that I can kind of listen through that and pick out the stuff, right? But if somebody's nervous, they're nervous because they care, right? Somebody comes in and they'll give a crap, like,
Well, that sort of takes care of the questions and queries that students have. Now I sort of want to ask you about the next stage of people. So essentially we're talking about young professionals, or more specifically, I should say, early career professionals. Having been one myself very recently, what can they do to improve their chances of landing that first role? Because I even from personal experience, it took me I graduated in April of 2022. I started in November of 2021. I started applying, and I got the reason that I started early is because I was like, let me get rejected first so I can kind of figure out, so I can have a job by the time. And I was lucky enough to land a job. But what would you then suggest to those who were in that position, like me, who are trying to break into the career, into the industry?
Yeah. So the biggest thing, and there's no secret sauce to this one. You can Google it or go to ChatGPT or Copilot, and they'll all tell you the same thing. Before your interview, get prepared. Research the company, like at the very, very minimum. And I have had people come in. The very first question our HR representatives in interviews always ask is, what do you know about Genoa? Right? And I have had people sit across the table from me or on the screen and not have a clue. Get on Google and search up the company. Now, once you do that, like if I say, hey, Danielle, tell me what you know about Genoa. And then Danielle says, well, Genoa has been an innovator in 3D modeling production design since 1995. I'm like, yeah, okay, so you know how to use Google, you know how to read, right?
Yeah.
If you want to stand out, what you need to do then is you need to start hit up your network. See if you know somebody in there. See if you can find out some stuff about the company that is not on the website. Now you've done some digging and things like that, right? So research the position. Lots of times, if we're looking for a piping designer, we will take the generic role profile, and it's about 2 pages, and we will post that. But all we're looking for is somebody to do spool drawings. If you can research the actual position, and if you could find out exactly what it is that they're looking for, because it's very rare to anybody will have everything, but you will have some of it. So you want to make sure that you go in, and if you could get some insight into exactly what they're doing, even if you go in, I was just doing this earlier. I was researching a company. You go in and you can find all kinds of information. So like if you Google Genoa and then you start going in and looking at the projects that we're working on now, you can figure out like how far along is the project. So if the project is so far along, that means that we're probably done modeling. Now we're looking for people to do drawings. That sort of a thing, right? So do some of that research, get yourself as prepared as possible. And if you do score your interview, like that's the key. The key is you want to get a conversation, right? Ask what technology that you're using, right? Research them all. And here's one that I like. If the conversation is getting kind of weird and you don't feel the vibe, you might come across as being a little bit overly aggressive. But if you ask about the pipeline, right, you just say, okay, so I know that you have Polar and PSC now, like we have 2 icebreaker projects. What do you got coming after that? What that tells me is that this person is looking for a place to hang their hat for the long haul. They're not looking at coming in and working for 6 months and then buggering off down the road for $10 an hour more, right? That might still happen, but at least if you're asking about the pipeline, then you're indicating that you're looking long term. And
that definitely looks good for sure.
Our market segments now, we're now into long projects that are multiple years. Like we want people for the long haul, and I don't mind that question if you're building up a rapport and something like that. So that's another little bit of advice.
What are your thoughts on? And I'm only asking you this because this is something that has brought me a lot of success, which was doing the research and writing out a bunch of questions to ask your interviewers, like near the end of the interview, and have like a nice flow ready. It's like, what are your thoughts on that?
I love it when the interviewee has a couple of questions, and the best way, especially if you're nervous, right? The best way is to have a couple already prepared. In a lot of cases, I end up covering almost everything that they would ask. Like, I don't know how many times interviewers say, hey, you got any questions? You got to have questions. Oh man, I had 5 questions all listed out and he answered all of them. So, so if you could ask a cool question that I've never heard before, I would remember. Right?
It's
I don't know what it would be, but if you could somehow or another come up with a question to ask Jim that Jim has never had anybody ask and makes me think, I'll remember you.
Yeah. Now, you've also mentioned like long-term projects, longevity in projects. So what makes people stay? In your experience, once someone is hired, what are the biggest factors that influence whether they grow and stay with your organization, or whether they decide that it's best for them to move on?
Yeah, well, back to one of the first questions, like in the old days, right, there was way more people than there was work. And so you were lucky you had a job, and you were told that every day. Go do your job, sit down, don't ask questions, and count yourself lucky to have a job. That's not what it's like now.
Yeah.
The generations coming up now, and I've done a lot of research into this, and I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek. I've read a couple of his books. I watch his videos all the time, and there's a bunch of other people as well that I like. I go down a rabbit hole sometimes on a Friday night when I'm having a beer or whiskey. Right, on my laptop because I'm a nerd. Like the generation now, the first thing is that they just having a job is not enough.
Right.
Right, and even when I hear the government and politicians like, yeah, we created 5,000 jobs. I said, like, we don't need jobs. We need careers. People want, the first thing is they want to make an impact. They want to make a difference. They can tend to be impatient. They don't want to wait in order to do that. But they want to know what's the future going to look like. So going back to the pipeline and stuff like that, right? They want to know what's the future is, and they don't want to be lied to. They want to know what's coming next, and they want progression. You tried chocolate cake, you want to try the vanilla too, right? You want to try the next thing and see if you can push yourself a little bit and where your limits are, but you might uncover skills that you don't, but you can't do that if now you finished up your the position that you were in, which went really, really good. And now you're hoping that you're going to get get a chance to go to another one and apply what you learned and then grow some more. But they can't tell you what that future is. So I see more people actually leave companies because of that than leaving for more money. Money is always the thing, right? Some people are motivated by money. I get it. Everybody gets it. Everybody got bills, right? But usually this is what I've seen happening. Money is the thing that makes you pull the trigger. It's the other things that make you look.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
I think that's a very fair statement. Yeah.
You touched on a bit there, Jim, as you were discussing retention about, people who have a good amount of growth over a small period of time or given a long period of time. So we often find nowadays when companies are looking to hire people in leadership roles, I'm just saying leadership roles is a big umbrella term, they do try and make this distinction that we are hiring somebody as a manager versus we are hiring somebody as a leader for the project. So it's like when we are trying to explore the difference between these two terms, in your experience, how do strong leaders differ from strong technical managers, especially in the shipbuilding environments?
Oh, start your stopwatch, Danielle. I can talk about this for hours. I talked about Simon Sinek. I want to talk about finite versus an infinite game. Okay? And so basically, in game theory, right, a finite game, that's what everybody thinks of when you think about games and sports and stuff like that, right? You got fixed rules, an agreed objective, the field of play is fixed. Everybody knows what the rules of the game are. Soccer, right? 90 minutes. Whoever scores most goals wins the game. Everybody knows the rules. Can't touch the ball with your hand, right? Can't punch a guy in the head. You get a red card, kicked off, all that stuff. That's a fixed game. Mm-hmm. An infinite game, a lot of video games are infinite games, right? Minecraft. The object of the game is not to score more points than anybody else. The object of the game is to just keep going and playing the game. A lot of video games are like that, right? Like, in the old days, we used to play Pac-Man or whatever. You just kept going. And like, if you were good enough, there was no, you get 100,000 points and you win. You just keep going and keep going. If you could go forever if you wanted to, right? So that's the infinite game. Managing is fixed, right? So if you're managing a team, you're given a set of parameters and, you're trying to meet your goals within those parameters. And so leading is open. Like leading is taking what you have and then building on it and then trying to meet your objectives and then keep going on to the next challenge and stuff like that. So here's a scenario for you. You got a piping team, right? And chief comes to you or the project manager is like, your next job now you have to do the entire hydraulic system. And so a manager goes back to his team and he either like looks at the resumes or the skills matrix or he asks, right? Anybody here know how to do hydraulics? And it's like, no, I've never done it. So like you got a team of 10 people. Nobody done hydraulics before. That's it. You're screwed. You got to go back to the project manager and say, I can't do that project because nobody knows how to do hydraulics, right? So then what do? The only option is to like do something else or get rid of 2 guys and bring in 2 more. A leader, I wrote this down. A leader would go in and say, hey, anybody here know anything about hydraulics? And then if the answer to the question is no, say, okay, anybody here want to learn how to do hydraulics?
Yeah.
And then you'll guarantee you'll get a couple of people, right? So then you say, okay, you got 2 days, go and hit the internet, go and see if you can figure out, like find whatever you can on hydraulics, come back to me, tell me what you found. Come back a couple of days later, right? And then, okay, so you found a course. All right, so you found a hydraulics course. It's 1 day, it's a crash course, but it'll teach you a little bit about it and stuff like that. Then go ahead and I'll go to the project manager and I'm going to go and I'm going to get some funding to pay for the course and we'll get you in there and you'll learn about hydraulics. And so basically what you're doing is you're building up that knowledge base, and the infinite part of it is that now your team just learned all about hydraulics. And so then they can share that knowledge. And then the next time that you bid on a project, you know that you have a team of people that can do hydraulics.
Right.
Whereas the manager takes what he's got and is either yes or no, or he tries to BS his way through it or whatever. Or, lies and says no. The leader is the person that's going to instill confidence and growth into people and identify the skills, and then get out of their way and let them go, and then take down the barriers.
Right. That's exactly what I heard when you were explaining it. Remove the roadblocks. Someone who's actually going to listen to the team. And I know that's something I've been pushing myself with a little bit more lately as well. Just like having the courage to delegate or trust other people to do things, just putting the right people into place to do those things. So yeah, I definitely feel the difference between manager and leader. So one thing, we've already talked about risks with retention and recruitment and things of that nature. But I know we've also talked a lot about knowledge loss, silos, and the leadership gaps that exist in the shipbuilding industry. So which of these concerns you the most right now in your position, from your perspective, and why? And have you given any thought to some ways that we could potentially mitigate those concerns in the future?
I think the biggest issue that we're having now, and we're running into it like both up here and south of the border, right, is we're following the same traditional processes that we followed 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? And, ships are more complex now. You can't, what you used to be able to do in 2 years now, it takes you 5 years, right? And we don't have the luxury of starting to design a ship and it taken from design until it hits the water, like taking it 10 years. Like we need ships and we need them now, right?
Yeah.
So following those old processes and the old ways of thinking, and like a couple of the stories that we just shared, that's the old school, the old way of thinking. The situation that we're in now, there's enough work in Canada that nobody has to be doing anything dirty to get more work. Everybody's getting the work. Now people they're undercutting their buddies down the road because they're trying to poach away their people and stuff like that. I heard a story about over in Finland. I don't know if it's true or not, but it came from a credible source. There's a group over there, a group of shipyards that they started to work together. And so if one project just finished off a cruise ship and then they had people available and it was like 6 months before they were going to start their next project, but down the road, the guys are doing an icebreaker and they're right in the middle of it and they can't get enough people, they'll share the resources and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I think we need to see more of that collaboration and cooperation. Mm-hmm. Because you gotta start doing more with less. There's still a lot of places that they're not doing that, and they're only thinking about them being successful. They're not thinking about the industry being successful.
Right.
So now going back to the infinite versus the finite game. The finite game is I'm going to make more money than the guys on the road. The infinite game is I'm going to make sure that 50 years from now, when I'm long gone and my kids and my grandkids, if they want to be in the shipbuilding industry, they can, because there's going to be lots of work going on, right? If you do get a chance, go and Google Simon Sinek, Apple versus Microsoft. That explains the whole thing, right?
Okay, really interesting.
Multiple videos of him doing it in talks and interviews and stuff. When you hear that, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay. It's so interesting, too, because I hear you talking about how things are taking longer nowadays. And you'd really think with all of the technological advancements that things would be quicker. But like you said, we're using outdated processes with new technologies. So that really is what's creating the lag, I suppose. And not only that, I guess the complexity, like you said as well, the complexity of designs have changed, of course. Yeah, it's just interesting. It feels counterintuitive because you'd think these technologies would make our jobs a lot faster.
You think.
But that's not always the case, yeah.
Jim, we've come nearly to the end of what has been a scintillating conversation, of course. So I guess I just want to ask you, in the end, in one sentence, what is the most important thing you'd like for someone to remember and take away from our chat today? Because as we mentioned at the very top of the hour, our intended audience, a big chunk of them are students. They are early career professionals. So in one sentence, what is the most important thing you'd like to tell them?
One sentence.
Yeah, that's all
Have
you get.
Met me?
Only
I know.
one.
This was a challenge. I'm the same way. I would struggle so much with this. I put it there specifically for you.
I'll give you 2 sentences and maybe you can pick one. So
that's acceptable. You're breaking the rules.
So let's take it down a level further than new grads or students that are in the programs now. Let's go down further to high school, maybe junior high school students.
Sure.
If you don't know what you're going to do, think about the maritime industry. And when I say the maritime industry, I'm fixated on naval architecture and design and stuff like that. But we need people to build, right? We need people to sail the ships and operate the ships, right? We need people to organize cargo and stuff like this. So shipbuilding takes in so much. If you don't know what to do, what you want to do, like there's so much out there in the marine industry that you could get into. So the one sentence would be, if you're not sure what you want to do with the rest of your life, check out the maritime industries. There's lots of resources out there. For people who are in engineering now, and it's a nervous time. You don't know what's going to happen and stuff like that. The amount of work that we have in ship design and shipbuilding just in Canada and the United States is multiple times more.
Yeah.
Try to be patient and don't worry if you don't get a job in the first while. People start to panic and, because they don't get that job. You may have to go away and get your first job or something like that. But once you build up a little bit of experience, there's so much work, even here in Newfoundland, right? Like I haven't even talked about like in-service support, right?
Yeah.
All of the brand new ships that we're building in the Coast Guard and the Navy, like it's like your car, right?
Yeah.
Go try to bring your car in to get an oil change.
Absolutely.
Everybody has got cars are going in to get their oil change. Well, the same thing is going to happen with ships. We're building so many that we don't have capacity to do the maintenance and stuff like that. So that's why we need a new ship lift down at the new dock to be able to bring up bigger ships and more ships, and a floating dry dock out in Bullarn to be able to bring up more ships and bigger ships so that we can do maintenance. I think building new stuff. And that's not even commercial stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I'm laughing so much at the fact that the question was in one sentence. Yep. I'm still not dead. I love it. I even
talked about the Arctic.
I know. I love the enthusiasm. So essentially the one sentence is there's so much work.
There's so much. We could do another full podcast on the opportunities that are going to be generated by the Arctic.
Yeah.
100%. Jim, I would like to thank you very much for joining us in conversation today. This was, as I mentioned before, a very intriguing chat. The topics that you've touched on, these are some very core topics within the heart of the shipbuilding industry itself, because people build ships, people design ships, but then you need to kind of build those people up in the first place. You need to get them to the right place. And it was amazing to be speaking to you today. Thank you for joining us.
Perfect. Thank you. Loved it.
Yeah, great. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. It was awesome having you and great sitting down and chatting with you. I know we've talked about it for quite some time, so it was nice to actually make it happen.
Yep.